Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ryan with From Corners Unknown. I hope you're all doing well. Just a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of speaking with Malevich, a blackened hardcore, grindcore, angular sludge outfit from Atlanta, Georgia. I learned of these guys a little bit ago. You may recall a conversation I had with Cam and Evan of Apostle, and Cam mentioned Malevich as a band that he really dug. And soon after that conversation, Malevich actually sent me along a brand new split that they just recently put out within like the last month or so with a band named Iron Gag. And that was kind of my first dabbling in their sound. And as a result of them reaching out, I thought it'd be great to have a conversation with them. And after digging through or listening just to their first LP and their new split, put 2 songs onto the split with Iron Gag, they have a very interesting sound, and the change in style or kind of the evolution in sound between their debut LP and their split I found to be very interesting. So I wanted to talk to them more about that and get a better insight into their influences and how they kind of came up with the sound and really what makes them tick, and just kind of explore some of the themes and concepts that they grapple with in their songs. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed this conversation between myself and Malevich. The sound quality on Malevich's end may sound a bit muddled. We did kind of a guerrilla interview where I was talking from my house as per usual, and they were on the road and they were just using a phone, so some of the quality may be a bit uneven throughout, but I hope you folks can bear through it, and I still hope you enjoy the conversation. Just after this introduction, I will play a track off their first LP, their debut LP, titled Disassociated, and at the end of this conversation, I'll play one of their newest tracks off the Iron Gag split named Trial of Metaphor. Hopefully this will give you a flavor or some context as to how much their sound has changed or evolved over these 2 releases. As always, thank you so much for your continued support, and thank you for any and all support you can give Malevich. How's the tour been treating you guys?
It's been awesome so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for it being our first time in a lot of these Midwestern cities. So we've been received really well and met a lot of really awesome people. And like we haven't, at least that I can think of off the top, haven't really played with any or many acts that was like, man, I don't know how we got booked with this band. Like every band's been pretty sick and
Awesome.
aligned with like us genre-wise and emotionally.
Interesting. And how'd you, was it, so you're doing a tour with Iron Gag, correct? The folks you released your split with?
That's going to be in July and August.
Oh,
Right
okay.
now.
So you're
But-
just,
But yeah, that's going to be coming up.
okay, sure.
Yeah, we figured that might be better for cities that like each of us are more networked in and have played more in before. And this is sort of our like first foray into a lot of these places.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And what kind of compelled you to start? Is it just kind of, have you toured a decent bit before this, or kind of just played a bunch of local shows in Atlanta and you just found it?
So coming up in June, we'll make, I think, 2 years that we've actually been playing shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pretty much, our first tour was after Christmas in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the East Coast run. And then a year ago, last May, we did another East Coast, that's in Boston. And it came back down through Ohio.
Oh, nice.
And then October, we did another East Coast one. So, I mean, we've been touring pretty regularly. It's just that we've been doing just the Southeast and the East Coast.
I
This
see.
is our first venture to the Midwest.
We've been playing something like 50 shows a year for the past 2 years or so.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So pretty steadily, like touring and playing locally and playing regionally, just as much as we can, as much as it's feasible with our jobs and our home life and for routing and
Right.
Yeah, we've definitely all like, this band largely exists because all the members of the band have been parts of other bands that haven't toured as much or haven't necessarily been completely aligned in how much they wanted to be on the road or how driven they were. So we've all worked our lives to be able to tour and are all really, like, we're really glad that we're all of the same mindset of being out as much as possible. Like, it's sort of, I think at least for all of us, I don't think I'm speaking over anybody, it's sort of like what the quote-unquote, like, point of doing it is.
But touring is an end in itself, you know.
Sure.
And being famous is cool, and like and whatever, and like being like and playing locally is fine, but like the unique experience of doing it, at least for me, is having an excuse to go and see places that you can't necessarily like take a trip to.
For sure.
You know, meeting people you wouldn't have ordinarily, and being able to play in front of people that wouldn't have seen you otherwise.
And seeing sick ass bands that might be in Chicago and they might never come to Atlanta. Who knows? If they do, we want to help do it.
And did you guys, so when you guys go tour, do you set all this stuff up on your own, or do you have somebody helping you out? Like, how do you figure out?
We do it on our own.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We've had a lot of friends who have worked with like random booking places or people who have said they're going to do their tours before, and I've heard too many horror stories about it, and
Sure.
I've had friends do tours where 5 days in a row fall through.
Really?
But, we just feel like if we have the control on it, if the show's bad, it's because we couldn't do it.
Sure.
But
Yeah, that
we
makes
just
sense.
like being able to do it ourselves. We love networking. We love reaching out and looking for all these places and bands.
Well, plus the fact it's not just one member doing it, it's all of us. And that's another thing about this band is that the responsibilities are very split evenly.
Okay. Interesting. And what was the, so you guys went out more into the Midwest. Were there, like, what are some of the stops or some of the places you were really hoping to, scope out and learn more about? Were there any, like, I mean, on the tour thus far, have you, like, had any surprise cities, like places that have received you a lot better than you expected, or?
I'd say St. Louis and Grand Rapids were both really awesome shows that
Sweet.
we didn't really have any expectations for, other than we knew that we liked the band.
Like we had friends there. The show in Grand Rapids was with a black metal band called Dogma, and then a band called Ruin, which is kind of a sludgy shoegaze thing.
Oh, interesting.
And they're
Okay.
like they're both bands that we've both ourselves and played with in Atlanta. And it's just cool, like having those favors returned. And it was a great bill. It was at a house. Had a good turnout.
Right.
Good friends.
Right, yeah, I think that the Dokma band, if I pronounced that correctly, I'm pretty sure. Man, I think I stumbled upon them a while ago. I think they did a split with a French band called like Pelorian or something, I believe, a while
Maybe.
ago.
That sounds like it could be
I
right.
think it's just an alpha split. I don't think I remember what band it was.
Oh, no, no, no.
they've been on Edge.
I botched that. It wasn't Pelorian. It was shit. It was some. I just conflated that with the dude from Agalloch for some reason. It was
They
Pelori.
split with Don Ray. I don't know if that might be what you're thinking of.
Maybe, yeah.
But still on Halo Flies Records, which is a record label. It's recently the owner decided to stop doing it, but
Oh,
this
right.
roster is amazing.
Yeah, no, that
And
was
some of those bands have been influenced on us.
right. Yeah, no, that was I saw some of the notes that the guy over at Halo Flies was kind of ending everything. I was a little sad to see that because I found some really neat bands through that in like the last year or so.
They're definitely one of the best labels for not just heavy music, but like DIY minded and like politically minded music.
For sure.
Yeah, I guess RIP. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and to that effect, I think that's part of what's been cool about all this as well. Again, like it's not so much like curation like that isn't so much about like keeping to a genre or keeping to a preconceived notion. Like what's been cool about this tour and a lot of tours and a lot of these shows is that we played with everything from like old school punk bands to like black metal bands. And I think that the labels and the movements, et cetera, that appeal a lot to us are the ones that are more, I guess, like ethically centered or more aesthetically centered. And you know, it's cool to be able to see the different cities, sort of like the different corners of our influences, like how like we can, I guess, put ourselves in the context of a lot of different scenes and get to experience those in different places.
Yeah, I mean, to just see a bunch of metal bands in the same genre for 2-3 weeks, whatever, would be pretty boring.
Right. And how do you stumble across? I mean, it sounds like you had to do a decent bit of work to kind of figure out some bands to tour with. If you were to just focus in on each and every city, kind of finding some bands around there. How do you usually make that decision?
We're usually either friends with someone who is a promoter and books shows or plays in bands, and we just sort of start from there. We might like name drop some that we found that have preferences, but usually we just throw it to their hands and trust them, and it works out pretty well.
Interesting.
It's any mix of that, or like Josh mentioned earlier, people that have played in Atlanta that we've met, or in a couple of rare cases, just knowing that we needed a city to connect two places and just digging through, shows or whatever rosters or DIY pages and just cold calling bands or promoters.
Yeah, I mean, we just thought this band's sick, they could be a punk band, screamer band, it could be black metal band, sludge band, whatever, just like try and make it work.
Sure. Well, with that in mind, when are you guys, you said East Coast and then more like Midwest. Are you planning to come out to the West Coast at any point?
That's our like goal for 2019.
Oh, nice. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, we don't have that many connections out there. We are currently planning on going to Texas before this year's over, so that we can have like a bridge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That will be really helpful. But I mean, if I go out to the West Coast, we want to like actually do it, and that's going to take close to a month.
Yeah.
So we want to like feel really prepared for it,
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But it seems like you could hit. I mean, there's a pretty good. I mean, I haven't toured before, but I'm sure like the circuit just going, all the way from Seattle down to LA or vice versa, just kind of flipping that. You can hit a lot of pretty cool cities along the way. I think you could probably make a good long tour out of that. I would imagine.
It's something off me the way. It's mostly there's some scary 8 to 10 hour drives are in between these really cool cities that are a little concerning, but it's going to be more worth it when we do it.
So, like, what kind of struck me was just the, like, initial impact first listen was just kind of just how caustic and abrasive, and it's just like a maelstrom of instrumentation paired, and the vocals are quite unique. At least relative to all the stuff I listened to or I've been listening to, the past year. But I'm interested how you guys kind of came into this sound, if it was just kind of a, like, how calculated it is, or if it was just like a very natural aggression you were trying to harness. under the band name?
So the band started in 2016. Sasha and I, this is Sasha talking. I played drums and he plays guitar. We kind of we've both been playing in like, I was in an emo band, he was in a shoegaze band, and I filled in for a couple dates with his band, and we started joking about the idea of starting a heavier band to kind of tap into another side of the music we wanted to be making.
It's the most metal member of one band and the most metal member of another band coming together.
Right. So we kind of those bands were not as active as we really wanted to be in our music making process. So we started writing music together, and Daniel, who plays bass, was my roommate at the time, and we all just started practicing together, and we just kind of pushed through writing that first LP, like kind of fairly quickly, trying to find a voice for the band.
Sure.
We were all really into Bow and Converge.
Right.
And those were like real like milestones for us early on. But I think we kind of wanted to do something that was more aggressive and more grind influenced.
Sure.
Yeah, because like there's the Converge, there's grind bands, like especially the Spartan Taxis, but we're also fascinated by ambient music and drone, and so we insert parts of that into it just to kind of diversify it.
Right.
But the overall goal is to just make something that's intense, not just sonically, but like emotionally, and then how to voice that in a diverse way that would also keep it interesting, especially for like a longer piece of music, like an album.
And the original record, our friend Will Turner was a vocalist for that. And he, after a couple tours and releasing that record, decided that he wanted to kind of pursue academia and go to grad school. So, and wasn't able to tour the way we wanted to. So he kind of stepped down in the band, and we ended up working with our old friend Connor, who was in a bunch of other awesome Atlanta bands. Like Lady Bird was a main one.
Yeah. Like
grinding hardcore band that was really great. And as well as like Of the Vine and Hallowed. We've been playing shows together for years, but you can kind of take over talking about that process.
I think what was like funniest with that is, Josh and Sasha were just talking about how the bands they were in weren't active enough, and they wanted to like pursue a band that was more active, really like pushing to tour as much as possible.
Sure.
And that's the point I was at as well with Lady Bird at the time, which was the primary project. And so, I had joked with them like, "Yo, let me fill in on vocals for some shows," and it was just like, "Well, why don't you just join?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, I'm a guitar player, and I've never really done vocals in a band, but let's do it."
Right.
Well, you can tell the like whole story.
Tell them the story. It's worth it.
I think it's more fun.
Nah, I don't know. My mom might listen.
But basically, Connor had like this existential moment where he just decided he really, really wants to be in a band that tours. And then, like, just being friends for years, playing together locally and going to each other's shows, he just thought that we had a void to fill, and he was the guy for it.
Yeah.
Here we are. It worked out.
And he's done an incredible job and really took the time to kind of find his voice as a vocalist. And I think he has really kind of challenged all of us to up our chops in terms of songwriting, and we've all kind of found a really, I think, exciting and natural like voice for the band that we're just going to keep pushing.
And with the so how are you, I guess, like kind of looking at your debut LP to your split? How are you just kind of, how you noted, pushing the kind of challenging yourselves from a songwriting perspective? How are you seeing the instrumentation and such evolve? Like, are you seeing the sound kind of morph into something, trying trying to think of the right way to phrase it. Are you seeing the sound evolve
Definitely
in a different way, and like how so? Like what are you trying to focus more on?
so I also mentioned when it first started, it was literally just me and him jamming, and then Daniel joined in later through the writing process. It was mostly just like more of a metallic hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
That was a decision, and because I think like even with just the 2 song split, like there's a noticeable difference.
Oh yeah,
that's more of a metallic hardcore with like the occasional
Sure.
more experimental song. With we're still retaining the intensity that we desire, and it's like discordance and the use of like dissonant notes and just dark tones, etc. But now we're wanting a more like twisted, avant-garde metal like approach to it.
And I think, like, with the first record, like, as someone who listened to that as an outsider, like, it was written really quick, and so there are songs off of it that are still really great because you write a lot of good stuff like that, but there's also, moments that, get lost kind of quickly. And, like, on this, and, like, we don't really play those anymore, but with this split and the songs we're writing going forward, everything's kind of, we sit down with it more, we dissect it more, we really pick apart, like, well, this is cool, but we can do it better, and we can do it more interesting, and, like, pushing ourselves to, like, try different things and, like, push things in a just more unique direction overall.
I think that, like, especially, like, as a drummer, the rhythms that we're using and the way that we're kind of breaking down the music and approaching it has been far more intricate than it was on the first record. We have really taken each part and demoed everything out and then gone back and edited it and pulled things out when we feel like it's a little too long, or, made small changes that have a larger impact on the entire composition.
It's a lot more intricate of a songwriting process. Plus, I think a thing that, a lot of bands have one main primary songwriter, and here like, people bring in ideas, but it's a collaborative effort.
And do you guys ever? Yeah. And has there any? And it's been like that for quite a while as well, kind of like the collaborative effort, because that is interesting that you note that, because you like generally when I spoken with some folks or some bands, it seems to be like there's somebody that kind of maybe writes the riffs and then they kind of build the foundation around it or something of that sort. But that's interesting to hear.
Yeah. One of the reasons more intricate is because it started out just me and Sasha, and then Daniel joined in, and then now it's the four of us, like, just writing and then breaking it down and then rewriting it.
It's definitely taken us some time to kind of figure out what that language is and how exactly we express that and balance out that writing process. It took us months of kind of writing songs and then scrapping ideas and writing songs and scrapping ideas before we kind of hit a stride, these four people. And I think we're now at a point where we all kind of feel really comfortable working with each other and bouncing ideas off each other and telling each other that our ideas suck if they do. And like really holding each other to a certain standard that it feels very correct. Like we all are kind of providing a part to that puzzle, and it's been coming together in a smooth way, smoother way than it has.
And interestingly, like Trial Metaphor, the first song on the split, it actually started out as like a drum riff from an old idea that we tried and we scrapped, and Sasha's really liked that drum pattern. And we built the song starting out with that. Like it's not all just guitar based.
And what would you say, like, if it's, I know it's based on what you're telling me and what you've discussed, it sounds like how you kind of bounce ideas off each other. Could you pinpoint, I guess, in addition, you all play your own respective instruments or you play your part, but are there specific components you kind of consistently see yourself trying to add into a song composition? Like, are there certain, not asking that in the best way, kind of like,
I think our goals for each song kind of just depend. There's some nugget that kind of starts it, and then we kind of build off of that rather than having some kind of like top down idea of what the song should be.
Right.
So there's not really any point where we say like, oh, we have to have this specific structure to the song, but more, okay, we have like a general structure, but let's kind of refine that and make it really speak to a certain narrative, emotional narrative that kind of follows the ebb and flow of this song. And we respond more to what we already have down than we do coming into the writing session with some preconceived notion of what it's going to be.
Okay.
Right, like it's not about the breakdown, and it's not about like, oh, this is the part where there are blast beats, but like I think that what is so cool about like what we're doing is that, again, none of us really have preconceived notions about what the band is. Like each song is just sort of the best way to tell the story as it unfolds. Metaphor that I like to use a lot that everyone else is going to want to edit out of this is like is sort of like the art. I think art's really compelling when it feels like you've like taken the back of somebody's head off and like put a flashlight in the back of their head and just projected their mind out. And like a band is like the hologram of those four people's minds intersecting. And it does really feel that way, where there's not like we didn't take a thing and do it our way, but it's just the four of us like existing in a space, and this is what that feels like. Like there's things that like we think are like dumb or sick, but in the end of the day, it's just about what's like cool in that moment for that song and in this space. I don't know if that's banal or not, but
no, that makes sense. I mean, like when you describe it that way, I can actually like visualize that pretty well. Just like kind of if I understand it correctly, just kind of having the four persons, and then you kind of have each of your own, but you have those overlapping sections, and that's where you can kind of that's kind of where the song crafting comes in. I don't know if I got that right, but that's kind of what I'm visualizing based on your description.
And it's not like, oh, we shouldn't do this because it's not metal, or we shouldn't do this because it's not punk. Like, we shouldn't do this because it's dumb. And it's like an agreed upon, like, that's dumb, so we shouldn't do it. Not like that's not X, Y, or Z.
There's also some where, we just think, like, there's something we could do, but it's too easy. Like, it's too predictable. It's too, like, I've heard bands do this before, and we want to challenge ourselves, like, no, let's do something that flows and fits the song. I don't want to just write music that's weird parts slapped together that don't make sense. I want to make it cohesive but unpredictable.
I see.
And like, I think organicness is something that a lot of us have sought out and gone for. Like, the song shouldn't feel contrived, which adds, I guess, what we've been talking about, and it should feel very much like an organism. And an organism doesn't necessarily have symmetry. It might, like, whatever, a starfish has symmetry, and that's sick. But like, a lot of things aren't symmetrical. And it's about like saying, oh, this song is best served symmetrically, or this song is best served with this like horrible growth on one side of it. Again, like it's more about like doing the piece justice, I guess, than doing a genre justice.
And what is it that I guess if we were to kind of like dig into some of the concepts or themes that you grapple with in your tracks, what is it that you're trying to address or deal with or wrangle with in your compositions generally? And I guess we could speak about that more specifically to your most recent split or your split release that just came out.
So I think we can kind of approach that from different angles. Like, there's lyrical ideas that we had that we've tried to get at or try to kind of achieve a thought or work something through lyrically. But then there's also kind of the more structural side of songwriting, of just like actually writing the parts and how those like correspond to each other or what they mean to a larger idea of genre. And then there's also just kind of the emotional space that we want the band to exist in. Which I think has its own influences, at least for me, that aren't even necessarily just music. It can apply to a lot of different forms of art that resonate with me or sit with me for a long time, that I want to kind of work through, but just through the lens of Malevich and what that means to make as this band.
Like, I mean, if you've seen our artwork, Doc over here is the one that did it, and it's really dense and detailed and twisted, and I think the music they reflect each other. and that is very much on purpose.
Yeah, like lyrically, these two songs both kind of have kind of like an external lens, and they're like kind of in some way, socially minded. But not all of the music is about external things either. Like we like to be able to write lyrics that are reflective and personal, as well as things that are like
more like
kind of our take on some larger theme or idea.
Yeah, there's definitely a social criticism or extension to what we do.
Okay. Yeah. No, sorry. I'm just looking at. I never even. I just blew up the artwork and like was just looking at it while talking. And I was just like looking at all the different intricate details.
Yeah.
And so when you guys talk about the emotional space as well, you want the music to exist in, or kind of the project to exist in. What could you illuminate that a bit more? Kind of what it means for each of you respectively, or
I know personally something that I was really interested in starting this band was kind of the darker side of surrealism.
Okay.
In particular, I've been reading like George Bataille, and the kind of big materialist-based surrealist movement was something that really weighed on me for a while, and just thinking about it, and the concept of like kind of the lowest parts of our life and the most grotesque parts of our life being integral to expressions of like all things, and that you can't have something that's beautiful without something that's grotesque. And these this kind of duality and multifaceted nature of people, and in making like the album art and just again like the tone of the music. I was definitely wanting to tap into this sense of another artist that really impressed on me was a surrealist photographer named Hans Belmer, who did these like warped, grotesque human bodies, and I think that we've tried to kind of tap into the music feeling like it's being just twisted and warped and emotionally vulnerable, but also like angry, and dark at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we exist in this world, and there's beautiful sides of it. There's also really dark and twisted sides of it, and I mean, like metal and extreme music's always explored that, but like there's endless amounts of bands that they're just it's another punk band ranting against authority. It's another metal band criticizing Christianity and being like hell, Satan, whatever. Like we want to be more personal in our approach instead of just doing this genetic wall of what people expect.
Right. I don't think that any of us have like much interest in just like having a black T-shirt with a skull on it, like every metal band does. Like we love that that world and that imagery, and we want to pull from that, but we want it to feel a little more nuanced and complicated. Yeah,
I see.
No, I'm not. I don't want to rant, but I mean, I guess to elaborate, it's not just for the sake of, at least for me, like not just for the sake of being different, but like, again, like I can only speak in metaphor or whatever, but the whole the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house thing. Like, I think that so much of like society is awesome, but a lot of the, I guess, negative aspects of society would be the construction of an ideal or a norm, and a lot of authority gets implemented in a way of like establishing a norm and then enforcing a norm, and then that norm and what is different than it is than what is bad. And that by making unprecedented music, and music that does actively just break out of any sort of formula, it is a statement of like nothing has to be a way, no matter how much it's enforced or reestablished. And that reminding people that even if it's yourself is like a really good exercise in maintaining individuality and, moving forward in one's own path and like changing the world, etc.
Is there a way, and apologies, this may be like an inane question or a redundant question, but is there a way in your mind you make sure that kind of your your effort, or just your genuine just your genuine effort when you're creating music to is there a way to you try to ensure people know that you're trying to, like, you're doing what you're doing, and it's just kind of with trying to, you're not being different for the sake of being different, like you said, but kind of with the thoughtfulness of the lyrics or the ideas and concepts you play with? Is there a way you try to make sure you're communicating, like, that uniqueness to people, or is it just kind of a hope that people will kind of come into it and they'll recognize it based on the artwork and the song structures?
I think it'll speak. What we go for is that, like, the music itself, the lyrics and the art all speak on its own to like what we're about. Yeah, I think the goal is just not to have to go out there and say this is what we're about, but that the music, the lyrics, and the artwork, it all speaks to like the larger image of like what our band is.
Sure.
I mean, like, I know I personally am a big believer of the reader of the book has their own interpretation. The viewers will have their own interpretation. I don't want to tell them verbatim that this is what this is about, this is what this comes from. I just want them to kind of experience it themselves and let it touch them, and they can read the lyrics. And I mean, hopefully we'll get the right idea across. But I mean, I think it's more meaningful if that person has their own individual attachment to it.
Right. I think, to me, like, I agree with what Josh was saying, that like a successful piece of art is going to be able to be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I'm happy in the creation of something if someone can listen to the song and take something very different from it than what I put into it.
Sure.
But I hope that on some level they're willing to sit with it long enough to kind of dissect what we're trying to get across, whether that's in the lyrics or the composition or whatever. But that they can still have their own, emotional connection with it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about, anything that, you were noting a handful of authors and things of that sort, but other things that influence you. Yeah, musical influences, I would say, like kind of, where you draw, some of the inspiration, or like some of the artists that spoke to you early on and kind of compelled you to begin creating music in the first place, and what about them really struck a chord with you?
So all of us play or have played in a lot of different sounding bands.
Okay.
And this is our first more musical project that's on the extreme side of music.
Not for Connor, but for
right.
And
so
the metal band.
I think we have influences that range pretty drastically in terms of like how we got started making music.
Sure.
We're all in our mid-20s, and we all sort of like, just to different extents, but just developed through, listening to new metal and
right.
Like, to agree, it's just the stuff that was popular when you're, middle school and high school. Linkin Park and Slipknot were like my first loves musically.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, heavy music definitely played a really important role early on.
Yeah,
going to shows and just the energy and emotional kind of fervor of heavy music. One of my first concerts was Guar.
Oh,
that
nice.
was really really important to my development as a child. Growing up around Atlanta, seeing the Chariot was a really big deal for me too. They really impressed me with just the intensity of their live performance, and like I was always wanted to play in a band that captured that same.
I see. Sure.
So to go just like my personal life, there's some reflection on this. Like none of us are actually from Atlanta. We're kind of transplants, and Connor technically lives in Marietta still.
Oh, okay.
But we're both in, like, smaller towns that, is the American South. There was a lot of ignorance. There's churches everywhere. We've pretty much, like, grown into people kind of wary of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, when I was in high school, I was listening to, I started out with new metal, whatever, but then I eventually, discovered death metal bands. I discovered bands like ISIS and Neurosis that really just kind of blew my mind in terms of what you can do with heavy music and what you can do, like, songwriting-wise, because, like, this band, ISIS, Neurosis, for example, will write a song more linearly rather than, like, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Mm-hmm. But, like, I was in a small town. I didn't know anyone who shared this music. And then I ended up going to this house show and met people that, who Fugazi was. And then I just started going to punk shows down in Atlanta, and it changed my life. And, crisscrossed with Sasha, with him being based in Athens with his screamo band, Nurture.
Okay.
I think I probably have the most ass backwards way into metal music of the whole band. I'm from Athens, again, where Sasha went to school. Daniel here also, by the way, for what it's worth. And there wasn't much heavy music in Athens, which Sasha can also attest to. And, like, my parents, like, the music that they showed me was, like, Janis Joplin, like, AC/DC, nothing terribly groundbreaking.
Sure.
And some of the first compelling music that I experienced, for better or for worse, was the, like, Athens avant-garde, which is, like, on varying spectrums of what people would call avant-garde.
Okay.
Like, everything from somebody playing a literal radiator, hitting it with a drumstick and talking about their day, to touring puppetry troops that played in people's living rooms, which were really sick. And so metal was more of something that, like, I guess found intellectually interesting after living with Sasha. And it was like, oh, this is an interesting way to express that desire to be just, like, weird or other. I think it was more in, like, the way that I arrived at it.
Yeah, and how is the, I guess I got a little bit of an insight into, like, the Atlanta music scene. But, like, from your guys' perspective, like, how has it been, like, have you guys been, like, could you kind of, like, describe, like, the overall heavy, like kind of like what, like, the metal scene is? Like, how do you guys generally, like, do you not really fit in the archetype of what heavy is there? Because I've never been to Atlanta, and I know that there are a number of great bands and some really, I think Cam taught me that Dead in the Dirt's from there or around there, and I didn't even know that, and I've been listening to them for a couple years, and I was just like, oh shit.
There's actually a great starting point. I mean, Atlanta itself, you have to think the city where it is. It's in the middle of the Southeast. It's pretty much the cultural center.
Right.
Well, it's definitely one of the cultural centers. I mean, Atlanta is besides all the old soul artists from the '60s and all their brothers, whatever. I mean, we've had Mastodon, which is arguably the biggest metal band since Pantera, and then Outkast, one of the greatest hip-hop artists of all time. But Atlanta has its strips of bar venues that they're actually open to all kinds of music.
Sure.
And we've had our DIY spots that come and go. I saw Dead in the Dirt for the first time. I've actually saw them grow. So
oh, really?
Blake Conley, so Blake Conley was in a band called Me, Him, Call It Us. You are an incredible, like, mathy, grindy band that everyone should definitely listen to if they're into that. And I've already had heard of that band with no idea that they were from Atlanta. And then I saw Dead in the Dirt, which was the first, like, local band that I saw that took everything seriously. They had amazing musicianship. They had an actual established aesthetic. They had, full stacks for one guitar player, which, I mean, when you've been going to basement shows watching punk bands, like, you don't see that. And it was one of the first shows where, like, they actually cut the lights out in the venue. They started playing. People started going crazy. Bo, the bass player, was actually shoved into his bass stand, which almost fell over.
Jeez.
And that was in, like, Loganville, which is, like, probably 30, 45 minutes outside of Atlanta.
Weird.
But then I saw them, Wonderroot, which was an old house venue.
Yeah, West Philly.
But it was actually essentially a house.
Right.
And just a tiny spot, watching that band tear it up. And I've watched them with the bow, and then just sort of, Blake was one of the people that, I just discovered grindcore. I was asking him what his favorite bands were. He was the one that showed me, Insect Warfare, Margarita Grind, etc., which has influenced this band. And, it's been large to my development. And then, I've overheard them talking about how they got this email from Southern Lord, and that was after they did their first West Coast tour. And then, you saw how much they blew up.
Interesting.
But currently, I think probably currently is more what you're after.
Yeah, the scene, like, in a larger scope, it's really diverse. And especially in terms of heavy music, there's like the bar metal, stonery, slash sludge bands,
which usually appeals to the older crowd.
But those bands are sick. But we kind of fit in a space that's kind of between a lot of different sounds. So we played with those bands. We played with the more Atlanta hardcore straight edge bands.
Okay.
As well as
screamo
bands, post-hardcore bands, noise artists. We kind of sit in a space between all of those things. So we've been really lucky to be able to open up for shows where we, aren't necessarily playing with bands that are making the exact same kind of music as us, but we're getting kind of step into at least a segment of what we do. And it's been really exciting in that regard. Just being in Atlanta, having such a diverse scene that allows us to play with a shoegaze band one night and a noise band the next night, and then play with a black metal band or a grindcore band.
That's how it is at home and on tour. We just said at this middle ground, which as part of the conscious decision to pull all these different influences, we don't want to be just a metallic hardcore band. We don't want to be strictly a black metal band.
Right.
It hits us hard, and it vibes the way we want to vibe. We want to take a little bit of that into us. Sure.
And would you, I guess, just kind of from your own, just playing in a live setting and doing as many tours as you do, how do folks usually receive, just the auditory experience from you? Because that would be a really interesting show. If I went to I was I'm gonna go see the shoegaze band, and I never heard of you guys before, and then you open, I'd be like, holy shit! They'd be it'd be such an awesome just clash of sound. But do folks, if you speak to them after sets, do they usually receive it pretty well, or how does it usually?
Yeah, I think it varies pretty widely. There's definitely the people who we to start our set just hit a big wall of feedback, and we have a lot of amplification playing after a band that's completely different than that. There are definitely the people who walk out of the room and just don't want to take any part in it. But I think people who are into music that is a little different than what they're used to are usually fairly rich.
It just depends, because you know how the shows go, especially if they're DIY shows. The reality is that the average music listener doesn't have a completely broad appreciation for everything. We've played with almost hip hop groups before, and
really, wow.
Usually, it's actually the musicians that we played with that are really appreciative, and I think that's probably because
they're burned out and shit.
You're not. Whatever.
They are.
As a musician, I think you sort of have this natural appreciation for different sounds and different means activity. So, occasionally we'll have someone's oh man, I didn't know this was going to be a metal band. This is sick. And then sometimes it's no one says anything except for that shoegaze band they played with who are really into it.
Yeah, it's Connor and I especially, like, we all definitely have our fingers in booking shows, but Connor and I book pretty heavily at DIY spaces around town. Mm-hmm. And we booked shows that have been incredible and ones that we thought and hoped would have been sick that no one seemed to care about.
I see.
It's weird, man.
It's nature of the thing.
Yeah, it's nature of the thing. But like, we're definitely not at a point, I guess, for what it's worth, where we can like headline a show and know that it's gonna just ace it. Like, right. There aren't like a lot of like, there aren't too many, or like not one succinct like genre, or many succinct like genres or bands where it's like, oh, you got this band, it's gonna it's gonna slap.
Okay.
And that's like, again, it's what's cool. Like, Atlanta has a lot of different interest groups. Like, it's a very diverse city, even, from income to background.
Right.
To, it's like 5 million people in this giant suburban ocean.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so that's like, which is great, because like when like it's like going to other places where it's like, oh, you mean you didn't get this one big hardcore band, well then your show's tanked. There's a lot to pull from, but it's also interesting trying to reach and appeal to this incredibly giant, wide, diverse group of people.
I see.
Well, 4 shows in Atlanta, there's always going to be another show. Like,
right.
Any night.
Or a living room with the TV. I mean, honestly, I don't want to be super jaded about it, but I straight up feel like that mentality is a way bigger competitor, at least in people that I've spoken with in other shows. Like, and which is like fine, whatever. It's different. People want different things. Like, live music isn't everybody's cup of tea.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just interesting, sort of, and that's a big existential thing for me, where it's like, what is this game of trying to like trick people into caring about live music? And then,
yeah.
And then you have shows that are this is worth it. But then like a lot of the times, at least to me, again, it feels like it's some sort of sabotage of like, hi, I tricked you into getting to the gig.
Right.
And I don't know,
but there's exceptions. Like, we booked Betrayal of Guilt from Texas after the OI spot, and like we had 100 people show up. It was sick.
Oh, nice.
There's still success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about that.
I wouldn't paint it with too negative of a brush.
No,
there's a lot of amazing music and a lot of amazing shows that we put on and been a part of. And,
Right.
Nothing that I said was like negative about the scene. That was more like my own angst. But like,
but that's true of every city.
No, exactly. I think it's really wonderful that we do have such a giant city and such a deep pool of acts to pull from, and
right.
that there are, like, it's not like, again, like, oh, you didn't get the one band, well, you're screwed. It's like, oh, well, we couldn't get the big band from this scene, so let's start pulling into a different scene or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
and sometimes it turns into just trying to pull from different friend circles.
Right.
It's a really cool game. Atlanta's got a really diverse color palette of music to paint with. It's fun. Because I don't even know how to elaborate on that. There's just a lot going on. It's like,
sure.
After being on the road coming home, it's really sick. It's really sick to like look at the whatever like giant dossier of musicians and bands and
right.
like it's just, I don't know, it's really exciting.
What would you say is one of the crazier shows you guys have had like in the last year or so? Have there been any that have just like gone totally off the rails? Not like in like not from like a bad perspective, but just like, just like maybe energy or, just like people like taking, to your music really intensely. Like what would be one of your like most favorite? Like
ones like at home, or ones that we've played out away, or both?
I guess you could do one of each. I mean, if they're if you've had like some pretty notable.
I think home-wise, our biggest show so far was when we opened up for Predator Man and Bell Witch, and we kind of expected it, but it was. I'm pretty sure it was sold out. Like there was at least like 100 people there, and we're playing with bands that we absolutely adore.
Yeah,
and respect. Yeah, and then I mean, those were obviously a lot faster than those bands. It's also nice to bring that to the table. And then, interestingly enough, like those are the big enough kind of bands that people drove up from Florida and Savannah. They drove hours to go see that. And then when we toured those areas back in January, they came back to our shows. And that was awesome. Cool. Like, just, I think it was Orlando, and someone showed up in our shirt. We're like, who's that guy? Oh, he drove all the way to Atlanta and saw us, and now he's back here to see us. Like, that's awesome.
That is awesome, yeah.
And
outside of the city, though, we've had some really incredible shows and played with some bands that we just adore and that are close friends with us. But recently we've had some really amazing shows in New Orleans. We had an amazing show in New Orleans where kids were just flying off the walls and tripping over each other, just going absolutely wild. We had a great show in Tallahassee recently too.
Oh, sweet.
Where we played a fest down there called Rotten Fest.
Okay.
That was another show where just like it felt like the entire room was just like a mass of people pushing it and clawing and swirling around. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, on that note, like sometimes people go to shows because they want to do that. Like we've played, like normal straight edge hardcore shows where like kids are there, the two-step, mosh, whatever, and they don't know what to do to our music, and then sometimes the right people come and they're just down to have fun and move and like appreciate where we're coming from as well, and it helps our performance because it gives me a lot of energy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you guys. Yeah, like I'm trying to think just for like I haven't been to it quite yet, but if you ever do festivals, they don't have a terrible number, but since you guys mentioned the looking forward to 2019, they have that Northwest Terror Fest. That may be a good one. I don't know how easy it is to get on or how hard it is to get on a bill for that.
Yeah, we're looking for it.
Yeah, no, we would love to play any of the Terror Fest.
If someone hit us with an invitation to do that and like the times align in the right way, like
we'd be there.
Oh, I make the time.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of ways to get you guys to come out here so I can go fucking catch you at a show, because it sounds like it'd be a really good live show.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm in, I'm technically from California, but I've been living in Oregon for 8-ish years, so I consider myself an Oregonian at this point.
Yeah,
I think that there's not a way that we won't be on the West Coast next year.
Yeah.
Funny because, if you listen to the split, we're still waiting on the 7 inches for those to arrive. And, the West Coast is a big excursion for us. Like, we have to drive all the way through Texas and the desert and the mountains over there from Atlanta. Because I doubt, someone's going to hand us the money to fly us out there anytime soon. But, so when we do that, we'll make sure, we not only have these 7 inches, but hopefully we'll have, 12 inches up to the next record, which we're still riding for right now.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And, I think it before, but we want to make sure we're ready for it.
Right. No, that makes sense. Oh, I guess on that point too. So I guess in addition to the split, so you're already etching out or chiseling away at a new LP. Is that what's kind of the focus of the rest of this year, in addition to, I guess, finishing the tour you're currently on and then your later tour with Iron Gag? Is it you're just making more tunes, or are you?
Yeah, we have this tour. We're doing a almost month-long tour, July into August. We're going to do a run out to Texas in September. And then besides that, which is a lot on our table, the other big goal is to finish the second LP.
Nice.
And kind of find what I'm viewing this split as is almost like a stepping stone. Right?
Okay.
There's the first record. There's this interstice where we're changing our sound, but you can definitely still hear a lot of that first record in there.
Totally.
And then when we hit the next album, it'll be, completely different again.
Interesting.
Yeah, not completely different, but it's going to, we mentioned before, the first record.
I think from the first to second it'll be big, but the middle's that stepping stone. It's that place that connects the dots between LP 1 and 2.
Definitely. It's going to be different. Again, we're taking our time more with these songs and turning them inside out and writing basically more intricate harmonies and tempo changes. And importantly, I think that's for the split as well. We've been more interested in pulling from weirdo death metal, black metal bands like Ulcerate, Imperial Triumphant, just bands that focus on weird discordant arpeggios and a lot of just aggression.
Grind, Plebeian Grand Band, Revenge.
Oh, nice.
Real nasty.
But it's going from, for the first stuff, it was more Verge, Dow, Colette, that's the core interest. And it's kind of shaping into this other thing, mostly just because we find it more compelling.
Yeah, and this new one is really not going to be centered on one thing. I think our big thing that we keep talking about is wanting to take our favorite parts of a lot of these different styles of music and just throw it into the blender and like create something though that doesn't just feel like we've thrown it in a blender, make it feel like cohesive and have it make sense like in the context of like what we want to create.
And we're about halfway.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Close, maybe 40% done, just writing like kind of the outlines of the songs, which we'll demo everything out and then come back to it. Probably have 2 rounds of demoing and then try to record something that's like really finished and cohesive and polished.
For example, 3 of us actually live together, and we try to practice once, if not twice a week.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
we've never stopped writing. We're never going to take a break.
Right.
But we're also going to keep touring as we're doing to support what we've already done while we are creating this other thing.
Okay. And pardon my, I wish I had a more robust vernacular when it comes to, like writing music and kind of the thought process behind it. I'm very inept with this stuff, unfortunately. But so like when you guys do the demoing out, like you say you're going to probably demo it out maybe like 2 times or, at least 2 times. Is that generally common, or is that's really just kind of the way you work and making sure you're getting the sounds and the flow correct?
Well, it's something, we mentioned we've been doing other bands, and this is something that for my shoegaze band, I pretty much forced them, they're willing to do it, but I was really adamant about actually demoing everything ourselves, which you can do with, a basic program on a computer and a few mouse, and just making sure it sounds right to your ears, and then that way you can, decide, let's add more layers here, let's do this differently.
Okay.
Maybe do a vocal harmony or something.
Yeah, sure. I've played in bands where there was 0 demoing at all, and we went into the studio when we were not very prepared, but the music was really fast and loose and kind of just like relied on that immediacy. But I think that with this band, it's really paid off for us to be able to record demos ourselves and really go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we're really achieving what we want.
And we know how to do it. Like, it would be stupid not to do it. It's a tool that's very useful. It's pre-production is what it is.
Right.
And it's something that we can do the money and make sure that the overall product is what we feel like is coming out of our desires.
It's just a way to kind of like look at it from another angle, because when you're playing the song in practice, you're like, yeah, sick, I love this part. But if you actually record it, like at least demos don't sound great, but they sound good enough to where you can take everything out and really sit with it. Well, then you take it home, you don't listen to it for a week, you listen to it again, you just hear different things.
Sure, of course.
And it's usually just nuances, like, this part should be played like 4 times, not 6 times, stuff like that. It's just the amount of times the part's repeated can make or break a song.
Okay. That's interesting. And do you guys have a particular, I get this is kind of going just a bit more forward, concept wise, or, some of the stuff that's weighing on your mind that you're looking to, like just for your new LP, like, are there, is there a certain, something that you're focusing on conceptually for this one? I know it, like, not to reveal too much, but like, are you seeing?
I have this image of Connor down on all 4s, shirt off, realistically covered in sweat, hair covering his face, gurgling into the kick drum microphone at every show. You have that in the interview.
No, that's the concept.
It's like that's like I just want that like, oh no, I'm so upset at this mentality.
I want like basically for LP2. I don't think there's like a lyrical concept yet.
Sure.
Even like there's somewhat of an artistic concept kind of floating around, but not really. But I think musically, it's like we want to take people on a ride. We want to have the meditative stuff. We want to have completely animalistic and bestial parts. And we want to have stuff that's really meditated, really intricate. We kind of just want to like take them on a very interesting ride that hopefully is really unique.
Yeah, I think what's most important in our goals and kind of like the holy grail of writing, at least for me, is that we're writing music that feels really immediate, really easily accessible, but still incredibly challenging to the listener, so you can kind of jump into it and not not have there be like a huge barrier to understanding what's happening emotionally, but then be really uncomfortable in some way afterwards, and that your takeaway is that you were challenged by it, and that you have to kind of come back to it and question how you felt about it and reassess it. I think that's really one of the main songwriting goals.
I mean, hopefully that's up to a listener. Like, hopefully you've gotten a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's definitely, it's like taking whatever our previous 10 has been and making that the new 5.
Right.
I mean, as corny as it sounds, like, at least that's what I want. Like, I want the songs on the split to be tame. Like, I want to just break past whatever we've already written and just make some real wild crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
And are you, and just where you're at in the writing process right now, you're like pretty set on, like, you think that it's going to be way more just intense and above.
It's definitely weirder. Like, I don't want to be, like, oh, it's more intense or whatever. Like, it's still blast beat. Still, I mean, there's slow parts, there's fast parts, more melodic parts, but mostly I just want to be more interesting, make it twisted.
Yeah. Gnarled, twisted, bleak, desolate, and unforgivable.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to that. No, that sounds perfect.
I mean, overall, it's like not just it's showing ourselves also, like not just the listener. Like, we're actually, it's almost like leveling up as musicians, because I couldn't play the parts that I'm playing live all the time a few years ago.
Sure.
Like, I also learned how to do double kick in this band, and you heard the results. I thought you were about to say, like, you're that good, but it got better.
Well, that's true.
Definitely got better. But like we're making this like for ourselves at the end. Like, yes, we have what we hope the listener to get from it, but mostly it's making music that is compelling to us, that interests us, and is cathartic to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I usually like to try and at least like wrap up conversations like with getting some recommendation, like, like, given that you've been on touring, you've seen some really cool bands. Are there certain bands you recommend folks check out, or like you recommend some bands just to kind of keep information flowing throughout the ecosystem of heavy music?
We'll do one at a time. I think my favorite so far it's hard to choose, but I'm just gonna go with Crowning from Chicago. They're an absolutely incredible screamo band. They sort of started out as like a really dark sounding Loma Prieta, and now they've sort of just like found their own sound, and they're incredible musicians, and they're really nice human beings, and they're just great.
Yeah.
They're one of the best contemporary screamo bands right now, in my opinion. Just pick a band that we've seen that you love.
No, I'm gonna do 2. I mean, I don't think we can talk about that Chicago show without talking about Sal. It's just nasty. It's so cool. Sal's like so rich and so low and such incredibly kind people. It's really cool to see a performance and feel truly entranced, like after seeing hundreds and hundreds of shows, and like still be able to see that band that just makes you go like, oh no, they did it to them. And then similarly, that's Unfurl, who we played with here yesterday.
Okay.
Like I'm not sure if they're still online with V's for U's or not, but if they're not, they should go back to using V's for U's because it's sick.
So to be clear, Sal is spelled like cost, but with an S.
Yeah, Sough.
Okay.
But yeah,
okay.
and Unfurl from here in Pittsburgh is just subterranean, horrifyingly low, gross music with just the weirdest, most inhuman shrieking over it. It's so
interesting.
Sick.
That sounds awesome.
It's like really dense, like black metal, screamo. Like there's a lot in it, and I love it.
They had a lineup change recently, and they don't have the recordings from their new lineup out, but those should be coming out relatively soon.
Interesting.
At least if what they say is true.
They have some self-recorded stuff online though.
So I'll take. We played with a band in St. Louis that they're very small on Facebook. They're just made up of a bunch of people that are in oh, no, I'm just putting the stage. Like, we really didn't have an expectation for this band. And so they get off stage and they're like, "Hi, we're Mara," and they blew the lid off the venue. It was probably the best screamo performance I've seen in years now.
I don't even think they have the demo of it. That's coming out.
No, they don't have a demo. They are even new to having a Facebook profile. But
wow.
They destroyed the venue and they destroyed my expectation of how that night was gonna get close.
Wow, awesome.
So, Mara, M-A-R-A. Key part is that they started just immediately screamo blasting just in your face. Finishes the first song, the vocalist goes outside, vomits, they keep going, she comes back in and just picks up where she left off.
Yeah. It was sick.
Jeez.
Man, we have played with a lot of awesome bands, but my pick would be Dakma.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about them a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Dakhma, Dakma. Just really, really good, emotional, atmospheric black metal. Just from Grand Rapids. We played with them a couple times now, and both times it's just they're a band where you just feel like it's such a treat to get to play with them. It's really, really humbling to play with bands who are just so incredibly talented, and they're one of those bands for me that are just afterwards feel super happy that I get to be in these spaces, especially in a small basement. You're playing that with 30 people, and it feels like you're just getting to take part in this thing that only a small amount of people are doing, and it feels really just really validating and really important personally.
Sure.
And the coolest part about it is afterwards you go back to their house and you hang out and you're good friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Music is really sick like that.
So this is the thing I've noticed. The heavier and more intense music is, the nicer they are.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, we appreciate you taking your time out to talk with us too.
Absolutely.
This is, we're just here doing this all day. We don't really have an option, but you chose to talk to us, and that means a lot. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You guys take care.